Hello and welcome to part 2 of our What We Read catch-up thingy because we did not post too many videos in the last ever.
We're working on getting better at that, you guys. We have a plan.
Yeah, we do have a plan.
We're planning to plan.
We're planning to plan. It's just been a busy end of the year, and so without further ado,
let's get right into it. So once again, I'm going to start off. First, I read a book called Imagine Us Happy. It is about a girl named Stella who has been suffering from depression, and she had a breakdown in her sophomore year or junior year, and she's finally back in school and, you know, dealing with all of those things. She's really mostly coasting through life up until the point where she meets this boy named Kevin, who is a senior, and they start a relationship. And the entire book, if you can't guess from the title, is basically, it's both the chronicle of how they ended up together and also how they fell apart. And it's interesting, but it's also quite heavy to read because there's like a lot of different issues that they're both dealing with. So there's definitely trigger warnings for that. It's not a happy book, obviously. There are good moments in it that will make you smile, but it's not a happy book. And I couldn't stop reading it once I'd started, so that's a testament to how it was written. And I also like that it flipped back and forth between like the present day and the past, and the present day and the past. Overall, would I say it's something that everyone should be reading? I'm not sure, because it's also one of those things where it's really more a taste thing. So I ended up finishing it. I thought it was pretty good, like a solid read. So I will leave it up to you to decide if you want to read it. The next book I want to talk about is one that I'm actually quite excited to share with you, and that is Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan. This is about a girl named Lei, and she is chosen as a paper girl, the 9th paper girl. Usually there are only 8. And these paper girls are taken to the palace to learn how to act around everyone at the palace and also how to best serve the king. And Lei is this ordinary girl up until the point she comes to the palace, and she learns all of these new skills. She learns more about herself, but she also learns that there are a lot of hidden secrets and conspiracies within the palace walls and without. And she also falls in love, but it's a forbidden romance, so that complicates matters too. And it's just this interesting YA fantasy series starter that really brings you into this immersive world where there's magic, and there's also like this political system that reflects a lot of things that may be familiar to other readers. What I liked most about it is that you see sort of how Lei goes from being who she is at the start, which is she's confident in herself, but not to the point where she is willing to stand up and really fight for things, like in the way that most like revolutionary characters would. And then towards the end you see her getting more and more convinced that there has to be a world where these things don't have to happen to her or to the other paper girls, where they are free to make their own choices and to do what they want. And I just love seeing that transformation. I also thought that the romantic aspect of it was really well done. I really enjoyed the world as well. I think it's quite fascinating, and I'm eager to return to it in book 2. Next, I reread 2 books, and I also got the privilege of reading a book that I'm highly anticipating early. So I reread Before She Ignites and As She Ascends by Jodi Meadows, and I also had the opportunity to read the 3rd book in that series, which comes out in 2019, When She Reigns. I read that one early, and I have to say it's such a phenomenal conclusion. Before She Ignites is about a girl named Mira who is thrown into prison after she tries to tell the truth and find out the truth about why dragons are going missing on her island home. And it's her entire journey of like how she survives the prison, how she gets stronger in it, and how she really comes into her own. And the 2nd book chronicles what happens as she tries to uncover more of the truth behind like the dragons' disappearances and the political maneuverings of the various islands. It all comes to a head in the 3rd book, and it's just so phenomenal. I like really enjoyed revisiting this world. I really enjoyed these characters. I especially have a soft spot for Mira, who reminds me a lot of myself, really, like just the way she handles things and approaches things, and just to see her really blossom into the person she is in that 3rd book is so phenomenal, and I cannot wait for you guys to read that one. Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. This is the US edition of it. This is a book about a girl named Morrigan Crow, and she is destined to die before her 11th birthday. But before that can happen, she is rescued by this man, an eccentric man named Jupiter North, and whisked away to this place called Nevermore. And she is told when she gets there that she is to participate in the trials to be a part of the Wondrous Society. And these trials are like a variety of different things that will test different things about the applicants, basically. And it's just so fun. Like, this book was just entirely fun and whimsical. It has this magical, like, Harry Potter vibe to it almost. There's a slight Doctor Who vibe to it, and maybe even a little bit of Willy Wonka in there. And I just enjoyed it so much. It's like one of those middle grades you read and like it just leaves you like with a smile on your face because you're just like. Also, I really want to visit the hotel that's in this book because it's freaking amazing, and I just like. Anyway, I really enjoyed this. I think Maki will too, actually. I'm looking forward to reading the sequel, Wondersmith, which came out fairly recently. The last book that I have to talk about before I switch over to Maki is a book called Everless. And I read this one because Kristen convinced me that I should. And this is a book about a girl named Jules, and in order to save her dying father, she goes to work at the place that they swore they would never return to, a mansion called Everless. And in this world, you can basically have your blood drawn and turned into coin. So it's like a currency. And so Jules is determined to earn enough so that her father can be healthy once more. But what she uncovers when she's at Everless is that there is a lot more to her own heritage than she ever knew. And also she ends up running into people that she knew from her past, which not necessarily a safe space. It is a fairly typical YA fantasy. It has very familiar tropes. You will probably be able to guess at some of the things that happen in it, but it was very enjoyable. I like the whole idea of like blood irons and time like being drawn from your blood like it's currency. I enjoyed the whole like who is really like what the truth of Jules' identity was. I enjoyed that as well. And I like the idea of this mansion and all of like the shenanigans that go on in there, the scary ones and the good ones. It was very quick to read too. And I'm looking forward to reading the sequel, which comes out at the end of December, which is very exciting.
Hooray.
All right, now to turn it over to Maki for now.
Right, so this series pretty much took up most of my time reading, what little time I had for reading, and this is actually finally got to read the rest of the Fablehaven series.
Yay!
And specifically, books 2 to 5, I want to say. So here they are. Book 2 is Rise of the Evening Star. Book 3 is Grip of the Shadow Plague. Book 4 is Secrets of the Dragon Sanctuary. Always awesome. And book 5 is Keys to the Demon Prison.
I mean, anything with dragons in it.
Right, and so basically follows the story of siblings Kendra and Seth Sorensen, who were invited to their grandparents' farm for like a summer, and then realizes that the farm is actually more than just a farm. It's actually a secret preserve called Fablehaven, where several magical creatures.
I wish my grandparents had.
It's kind of cool, and several magical creatures are sort of situated, relocated there. There are rules because you don't just let magical creatures around wild willy-nilly. Problem is that the people who have been keeping these preserves all over the world are coming against a secret society called the Society of the Evening Star, who sort of want to do the opposite. And as Kendra and Seth are brought into this world, they discover that the secret society that's evil has actually had their tendrils into their own kind of little secret society and wants to do things of apocalyptic proportions, literally.
Dun, dun,
I know. So it's a very slow burn for me personally, and I spent most of it kind of being annoyed at Seth because apparently it takes all 5 books for him to grow up to be the person that he's supposed to be, and he takes every single inch of that. Like, do you notice that people sort of change halfway through? This kid only changed at the very last. So I spent most of it kind of annoyed at him being kind of foolhardy and whatever. There's some timey-wimey elements in this, so it's a very, very unique middle grade series, I'd like to think. Very fresh. I don't like it as much as I have loved the Rowan series from last year, but it's definitely up there, maybe a shelf below or two.
Not a bad place to be.
Which is cool because I had to read these series because at BEA last year and then in the mail this year, I got Dragon Watch 1 and 2. Which I had to ask, hey, do I have to read Fablehaven to read Dragon Watch? I'm like, yeah, not really. And then I thought, nah, I'll just read Fablehaven on my own. I'm glad I did, because I swear to God, if I jumped straight into Dragon Watch because it was like a cooler title, it's actually set in the same series, taking place right after book 5, with the same characters and the consequences of what they did. So it is a direct sequel. They're grown up now a little bit more, just a little bit more, and I've grown to love them. This I actually put right up there with kind of the Rowan series.
Cool.
I may not necessarily read it over again. I was just rereading the Red Winter from the Rowan series, book 5 today, just because I can and I love those guys. But this actually made me kind of geek squee because just the character growth. There's so much character growth. They're heroes now, I'd like to think at this point, surviving whatever it was that they tried to whatever. And the stakes are just as high, and I absolutely cannot wait to see what happens next. So Dragon Watch sets them up against, well, dragons. So once former allies, now something else. We will see what happens there. So highly recommend that series to anybody who's looking for a nice long middle grade binge.
I guess it's back to me now. So the next book is a complete departure from all the other things I have just mentioned, and it is a book called The Autumn Bride by Anne Gracie. It's the first book in her Chance Sisters series. And it follows this found family of 4 women, 2 who are actually sisters and 2 who are adopted sisters, and they're trying to make their way in the world, essentially. The main character in this one is the eldest sister, Abigail, and she ends up having a sort of run-in with this elderly lady named Beatrice, and this lady has been taken advantage of by her servants, and so Abigail, out of the goodness of her heart, and also the same thing goes for her sisters, they end up like kicking out all the servants and then taking care of this old lady. However, they don't count on the fact that her nephew, who has long been across the sea, just earning more money to like pay back all the debts their family owes, coming back and being like, who are these people? Eventually, a romance blossoms between this nephew and Abigail, which is unsurprising. It's so cute. I have not yet found another story quite like the Wallflower series by Lisa Kleypas, where it's sort of the same thing. Like, they have this little group of women that come together because circumstances have willed it so, and they just try to make their way in the world, and I loved getting like that same feeling from the series. I do wish there had been a little bit more time on the romance, because it kind of feels, even though it felt like it made sense, it also would have just been nice to see them spend more time together. But I did enjoy all the antics of the sisters, and I did enjoy like their Aunt Beatrice. It was great, like that was so enjoyable. And I'm very much looking forward to reading the next one. The next book I have to talk about is Grim Lovelies by Megan Shepherd, which I actually buddy read with Kristen, which is our first ever buddy read, and we actually did a really good job with this one. This is set in a world where Paris has an underlying world filled with magic. There are royals who manage all the magic users. There are witches who are obviously the magic users. There are beasties who are human creatures that have been transformed as such from beasts. And there are the pretties who are like the normal mundanes, basically. And in this one, Anouk is the main character, and she's actually a beastie who is who is servant to this witch, Madame Victoria, who is the, you know, the best, or like the most well-known, most powerful witch in Paris, until the day that she's murdered. And in order for Anouk and the rest of her family of beasties to stay, in order for them to stay human, they have to find a way to either cast the spell that Madame Victoria cast to make them human, or to find some other witch to, you know, take on that spell for them. And so it leads them on this grand adventure all across Paris, really, and a little bit out on the outskirts of it. And it was good. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting it to be. It sort of reminds me a little bit of the Hazelwood, where it's very urban, it's very modern, but it's also got these fantastical elements, and that part I loved. I thought it was so fascinating just to see like how the author combined the modern day technology and even brand names we know and places we know, and just put like a magical spin on them. I do feel like the character development could have used a little more for me. Anouk is the only character you really get to know, which makes sense because she's the main character, but the secondary characters could have used a little more development, so I would love them more. I also think the relationship, the main romance specifically, is not necessarily my favorite. I also don't think one of the secondary like romantic aspects was very well done. But overall, I still thought it was pretty fun to read about like all the things they had to go through in order to preserve their lives. I do think that the second book is going to be better than the first one, so we'll see. Next, we have Dash and Lily's Book of Dares, which I read as an ebook. This is basically just the story of 2 teens in New York City around Christmas time, Dash and Lily, and they end up corresponding via a red notebook that Dash finds in the Strand that Lily has left there with like hints for a scavenger hunt. It's really adorable. I will say Dash is a little bit pretentious, and Lily is someone I could probably get along with just based on her personality, but I enjoyed it for what it was. It was just fun to read it, especially during the holiday season, and to see all of like these nods to New York during the holiday season. That was really great, and obviously anything that has a part set in the Strand is gonna win with me. So I enjoyed it for what it was, and I definitely think that it was worth reading just once. Plus, the entire idea of just finding this red notebook and having to go on this clever scavenger hunt and like going all around the city and to the different boroughs, that was really fun too. I read a short story collection called Snow and Love. There were 4 stories in it. One was by Casey West, the second was by Amy Friedman, the third was by Melissa Dela Cruz, and the fourth was by Nick Stone. Of this collection, my 2 favorites were Casey West's story, Snow and Mistletoe, which is about this girl who returns from an exchange program abroad because she just can't hack it over there. Like, she forgot what it was to love performing as opposed to just competing. and she ends up stranded in Denver, Colorado, and the only way for her to get home is to hitch a ride with some high school people that she knows, and they take this crazy road trip all the way back home. There's a very cute romance that pops up there. And the second of my favorite stories is Grounded by Nick Stone. That one has also got a main character who is stranded in an airport because of a snowstorm. She's stranded in Atlanta. And it's just this very cute thing because there's also a scavenger hunt in that one. It's also a very cute romance. I also thought the other two are pretty decent reads. Like Amy Friedman's is set in New York, and the main character is hired to be an elf for like this Christmas area in a department store, right. And that's one. And then the other story is called The Magi's Gifts, and it's about two main characters who are dating and in a relationship and what they're willing to sacrifice in order to get Christmas gifts for each other. This was like a great like holiday type read. Like if you wanted something like to read during the holiday season, maybe not so long because they're very short stories. This is pretty cute, and I would definitely recommend just checking it out for both Nick Stone and Casey West stories in particular. But it is a pretty good collection if you're looking for something that will just, you know, give you holiday feels. So I have Love and Friendship, which is by Jane Austen, and it's very, very short. And it is basically just a compilation of like scraps and snippets of her work, her juvenilia. I sort of wish I hadn't read it. By the time I finish reading all her other books, I can say I've read everything that has been published by her. This is really just like, it would be essentially like what it would be for me if someone took the scraps of like stories I'd written and just like published them. Like, you know what I mean?
Fair
like
enough.
You see how she's progressed as a writer, which is very interesting as someone who's read her like her actual published work and then this. And her trademark humor does shine through, and her tone, but I do think like it's not a necessary read. And the last book that I get to talk about in this video is Girl in a Wire by Gwenda Bond, which I have owned on Kindle for quite some time and only finally picked up. Forgot that it was a circus book, which was plus points in its favor. Forgot that it had Romeo and Juliet elements to the romance, also plus points in its favor. It's essentially like a mystery set in a contemporary circus. The main character, Jules Maroney, basically convinces her family that they need to join this big circus called the Cirque Americain. The only reason that their family hasn't been a part of that or didn't want to be a part of that was because their rivals, the Flying Garcias, were part of that circus. Jules spends the entirety of this book trying to unravel the mystery of why their families hate each other, to also figure out who's trying to sabotage the circus and their acts.
That's not cool.
And also made me falling in love with one of the Garcias. I enjoyed the circus elements. I still wish there had been more. I enjoyed the romance. Also wish there had been a slightly bit more of that. And I thought the mystery was really like interesting and fun to read. It's not like a new favorite by any means, but it was definitely enjoyable for what it was, and I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. So if you're craving something that has a bit of a circus vibe to it, then you might want to check that one out. Whew, that was a lot of talking.
Ha! Now it's my turn to do a lot of
it's trash time.
So
we're gonna call this trash time.
Guess what I read? As promised, we will talk about this now. I finally finished The Dark Artifices.
Don't worry, we're still gonna talk about this
starting with obviously Lady Midnight.
Oh, so you did reread it.
I totally reread Lady Midnight. Lord of Shadows, which I said I will not read until I know the ending of Queen of Air and Darkness, so I consider both. Now that I've read Queen of Air and Darkness, I did finally reread Lord of Shadows, so that's done.
Or is it?
Or is it? Offering to hold support groups for people with too many feelings, or if you're already holding one, may I join? Because obviously this is peak Cassandra Clare. This is peak. She has peaked, I'd like to think, not in a bad way, but this is the height of everything that is good and great about her writing. Is it just me, or are there so many fanfiction-y elements to Queen of Air and Darkness that I'm just like, oh my god, she went there. She totally went there. She totally went there. I find myself Googling new terms for ships because Kristen from Super Space Chick was like telling Alexa, she was texting Alexa, is Mackie like reading? And I'm just like, yes, I am. And then she's like, can we talk about it? I'm just like, totally. And we were, and we have been sort of talking about it all the way through to the end. I hear Jane was just like all alone with all of her feelings, and I understand that. I understand that now. I totally do. So too many things have happened in this book. Of the whole, I would say that it is her best written
series.
Objectively, like writing style wise. Is it my favorite story? Still no.
Okay.
But still no, obviously. I have my own golden trio now. terrible. Sorry, Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But at the same time, it opens up the world for whatever finale she's setting this up for, I think, which is the Wicked Powers. It's just great.
Even though I haven't even read all her series, I have to say it's very impressive considering the amount of books she has churned out that is set in this world.
I want to do what she's done, to be honest. To be frightfully
really cool.
honest, I want to do it.
Like,
be able to do it. She basically created her own sandbox and gave herself the leeway to play.
She's like, I can do all of this now.
Absolutely, and everything that she and all the tropes that she tried. From an R&D perspective, she's like, I'm gonna try this trope in this book. Let me tweak that around and make it on these characters. Yeah, all right, but I want to do this full on for these characters, and she does it. So for every kind of ship, there's basically almost every kind of ship that's out there. And I feel like by the time she finishes everything, she's gonna have a ship for every kind of thing.
She's gonna have an armada.
She's gonna have an
armada.
Armada. Welcome to the Cassandra Clare Armada. Featuring the Blackthorns. So it's been very, very painful reading all the way through. I'd like to say it was so rewarding, if not absolutely exhausting. It was so tight. It's just too many feelings, guys. Too many feelings.
But those are the best.
And kind of the porniest, I think, of all. Like, this is the most adult. Just as a fair warning, nothing you young folks haven't read in real fan fiction, but. It's almost an oxymoron, real fan fiction, right? I love that. And so all of the tropes, like the torture the cinnamon roll trope, right here.
I don't like that trope.
It's alive and well in Queen of Air and Darkness. It wraps up a lot of loose ends, I'd like to think, and brings back a lot of beloved favorites while putting new spins on them so they're not boring. So I highly recommend these to anyone who actually cares about the Shadowhunter series. And if you don't care about the Shadow, don't even bother. There's just too much. If you didn't like any of this with Jason Clary, and if Jem, Will, and Tessa weren't enough for you, I doubt the Blackthorns are going to do it for you. I highly doubt. Or who knows, this could be your gateway drug, and you can just ignore everybody else and be complete Julian and Emma trash, like me. Mostly Julian, because I want to be him when I grow up. That she was able to create such new characters that you'll also kind of appreciate is just amazing. So that's enough of that for me.
That's 10 books until I get there, guys. 10 books.
And that wraps up our
Shadowhunters Trash video. No kidding. That wraps up this What We Read, part 2 of the two-parter.
Yes.
We hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any comments, or if you just want to talk about being Shadowhunters trash, feel free to do so. And we would also love to hear what you guys have been reading. You know, we always like finding out what everyone else is reading.
And picking them up if we've never read them. Yeah, absolutely.
Also, if you guys are interested in having us talk about the Shadowhunters, don't worry, it's in the works. It just involves me doing a lot of reading.
We're gonna have it all out soon, and not just on our own. We're gonna have some friends over and do a thing.
It'll be fun.
It'll be amazing.
Anyway, so there. We'll see you guys in our next video. Bye.